everybody and welcome to Stitchmas Day 5! In today's video I'm going to show you how to make this quilt as you go hexagon placemat. I think it's a really beautiful placemat. So simple to do, so easy. You can do it in so many different colourways, Christmas fabrics, spring, really beautiful, especially for those of us that love patchwork. This hexagon is a classic patchwork shape and I really like it, and I hope you will too. If you enjoy the tutorial, please don't forget to like this video and please do subscribe if you haven't already. We've got more Stitchmas videos to come throughout December, so I hope that you'll join us and get on your stitching journey. So let's get into the video. The equipment you're going to need is some scissors, rotary cutter, a ruler, quilt basting spray, or you could use a fusible fleece if you wanted to, some pins or quilting clips, a hexagon template for your centre. You're going to need your backing fabric and you're going to need your strips for the actual hexagon itself. Now I'm using 2.5 inch strips. You can make them wider, thinner, that's up to you. So the first thing you're going to need to do is cut out one hexagon from your template. I'm using the Daisy and Grace template. If you watched yesterday's Stitchmas, you'd have seen me talk about this for quilt as you go, runners and all sorts of things. I'm just using that template for my hexagon. Really accurate, so that's just going to help me through the process. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to need to adhere your backing fabric onto your wadding or your fleece, whatever it is. I'm using the June Taylor quilt basting spray. You've seen me use this before, you know that it works for me. So spray that on there. If you wanted to use a fusible fleece, then go ahead. Just adhere that on. Now the reason why we do that, it just makes it easier when we've got the whole thing under the machine, that is really well attached. Now I'd like to flip that over and give that a good press. Now one of the reasons why I'm going to press this now is because I haven't pressed the fabric before, and you've noticed I've got the folds there from the fat quarter. Now this just is a fat quarter, just with a bit cut off. In fact, I'll give you the exact dimensions. It's 18 inches by 16 inches, this particular piece of fabric. So I'm just going to give this a nice press. So what I'm going to do with this tutorial is I'm going to stitch everything off camera, because it's really the folding technique that you'll want to see. All the stitching is quite self-explanatory. So I'm going to try and cut down the time of this tutorial, so we'll see how we go. I will try my best for you. So the first thing you're going to do is now flip this round so you've got your wadding facing up. You're going to need to place your hexagon roughly in the centre. If you want to trim this so it's accurate, then do. Then what you need to do is pin this hexagon down through all of the layers. Sometimes just one pin is fine in the centre. If you wanted to pin more, you can, but remember we're going to stitch along all the outside of this, so you do want to make sure that those edges are clear of pins. So now we're going to start off with our fabric. As I said, I've got 2.5 inch strips. I'm going to start off with this lovely red. So for this hexagon, it's 2 inches along here. So I'm going to need to cut a 4 inch piece. So every piece around the outside of the first hexagon is going to be 4 inches long. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one block of colour first, then I'm going to move the colours out, sort of like a rainbow effect. So I'm going to start with red. So I'm just going to cut some 4 inch pieces. You want to line up that corner to the corner of your hexagon. So starting from the top, you can start from the side if you want to. It doesn't really matter where you start on the hexagon because it's the same all the way around. But starting with your first piece, you must line up those corners like so. Then I would recommend pinning that into place. Then simply, from that corner, you're going to come in and then you're going to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way to the end of that 4 inch strip. So you're going to go straight to the end, and you're going to do that for every single piece so that when it's quilted on the back, it looks really neat. So I'm just going to stitch that and then I'll come back. You'll need to trim your threads as you go because you are quilting this. So you want to make sure that underneath none of the threads get caught in each other. So trim the bottom threads and then trim your top threads. I know it's tiresome, but really it is important. All I'm going to do is flip that strip up and give it a good press. Now you can press this or you can finger press it. It's up to you. Actually, I think that I'm just going to finger press this because that's given me, the quality of this fabric is quite brilliant. It's lovely batik. So that finger press is sufficient. So now we're going to move on to the top strip. Now naturally you would want to now do the right hand side because of a clock face, but what you need to do is start on the left hand side. So you're going to come over to this side, you're going to pop that corner on like we did before, so when you stitch, that folded edge goes right across the one you've already done. That just looks absolutely beautiful. So remember, left hand side. So place that down, pin it into place, and then stitch that 1/4 inch again all the way to the end of that strip. You may find that you've got a little bit extra on the other strip that you can see. Don't go into that strip. Remember to stay exactly how you've already done, which is the 4 inches. I do recommend a back stitch after every stitch because this is going to be quilted from the back, it's going to be seen, and it's obviously going to have a lot of wear and tear. So back stitches or stop and start points are essential. And I'm using a dark thread as I normally do so that you can see. So there's the start of our back being quilted. Now if we flip it over and we take out that pin and we fold that next piece back, you can see that lovely, lovely line. So we're quilting as we go. We're going to carry on, we're going to go to the next one, which again is to the left hand side, lining up that point, and I'm now going to do this whole section off camera and then we'll move on to the next row. So now we're on the last piece. Now the last piece is a bit tricky because you're not tucking it under anything on the next one. So what you need to do is fold over a 1/4 inch and press that really well on one end. Then you want to place that piece as you did before but slightly further in than previous and pin it again like you did before, and you're going to stitch from corner to end again like you did before and flip it over. Now we flip that over as we've done before. Don't worry about the fact that this end here isn't stitched down. The end of the fabric is going to be encapsulated in the next row, so it really doesn't matter about that. But there you go, there's the first row of our hexagon. Now if I turn this round, you can start to see how well that's being quilted. Really beautiful. Makes such a difference to quilt as you go. If you can hear random beeps, random horn noises, I do believe they're trains. But I've got the window open because it's very hot in the kitchen today. So I'm going to start with the next row. I'm going to go for this beautiful orange. Now we're going to move on to the next row. I'm going to go for this lovely orange. I'm now moving on to 8-inch strips because of the size that we've created. I'm going to start with the top row again. So I want to make sure I've got an inch either side of this strip that we've stitched down, and I'm going to place that right sides together like we would do. This is batik, so either side is the right side, but I'm going to stitch that whole length again and I'm going to flip again like I did before. Whatever size strip you go for on the next row, just make sure that you're consistent, that every strip is the same length, so that on the reverse, when you stitch that same length, it's nice and neat for the quilted section. So now I'm flipping that over. That's a really beautiful orange. I'm then going to do the same again all the way on the outside. So again, for the final piece, we're going to turn that end over and press, place it into position and stitch. If you go for thinner strips, you can have more going around. If you go for wider strips, maybe you want to do a bigger placemat or a centerpiece, you can have wider, so you don't need to do as many. But 2.5-inch strips, what I find works best is 3. So you've got your center and then you've got 3 rows on the outside, which is what I'm going to do. So my next colour, so I'm going for 2 different greens. As you can see with the orange, I didn't have enough orange to do all the way around. So I went for 2 different colours, and I think that actually works really well. So I'm going to continue that with the greens. I've got sort of a lighter green and then sort of a dark forest green, and I think they look really lovely, and I think they're going to look really nice on this project. So starting with the green, the darker green. So again, with your next strip, make sure there's 2 inches either side of the strip that you just had. So that's my strip there. I want to measure about 2 inches either side, and that's going to be the size of your next row. Okay, so lining the last row up exactly the same as we've done before. Make sure you've got the overhang either side and pin it into place and stitch. Just a thought, but if you used a heat protective wadding, you could have this as a heat pad for your kitchen surfaces, and I think that'd be really lovely. You could do it in Christmas fabric as well for Christmas, so perhaps you could have these going all the way down the centre of your table and put all your pots on there with all your vegetables and your potatoes and your turkey stuffing. Anyway, so with the last row, you don't need to worry too much about doing the back stitch at the end, because that's going to then be taken into the seam of the binding. So just make sure you do the stop and start for the start of the stitch, because that's still going to be at the back, nice and quilted, but don't worry about doing a back stitch at the end of the row. Again, making sure everything is really finger pressed nicely, or again, like I said, you can use your iron if you want to. I'm just finding it's quicker not to iron, and if you do get a really good quality cotton, then you shouldn't really need to. A finger press will suffice. You can use a finger press tool. There's little rollers that you can get, or you could even use the side of your stencil and just give that a good press. It's up to you, but just be careful whichever option you go for. Right, fold that last strip out. Oh, I'm so pleased with it. I'm now just trimming off those threads, just going to the back. It looks great. I'm really, really pleased with it. Obviously, you're going to be using a white thread if you've got white backing, or green thread if you've got green backing. But as you know, I've done this so that you can see the quilting on the back. So I'm hoping that you can see that. If not, I'll bring it to the overhead so you can see how beautifully that's quilted. So now we need our ruler. We're going to trim this up. An option here, if you wanted to, you could cut out a large hexagon that you know is going to be 2 inches or 1.5 inches larger than your finished piece. So you can bring those edges in, so it's sort of a self-binding mat. I'm not going to do that, I'm going to use 2.5 inch strips. So I'm going to trim off the excess. So all I'm going to do is place my ruler along the edge. I'm measuring 2 inches along the strip, and then I'm trimming off the excess. And I'm going to move it around, and I'm going to do that to the whole piece. 2 inches. Turn. Make sure everything is still nice and pressed. 2 inches. Turn. You can really see it coming out now, that lovely design. Again, second from last. Jumping ahead of myself. Last one, 2 inches. So now we've got a beautiful, beautiful hexagon, and you can see it quilted on the back. So there we have it, our finished placemat. I am really pleased with this. I think that this would look beautiful on any table. And don't forget, if you wanted to use thermal fleece in here so that you could have it as a on your countertop and put your pots on, then you can do. Such a simple, easy project. Few threads left on it. Such a simple, easy project. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on Monday, because I'm not filming Stitchmas at the weekends, so I'll see you on Monday for Stitchmas Day 6. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.